Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Tougies Take podcast. The Tougie and Sin Power Hour. Endo Mills off doing what he does, playing goaltender for somebody in the greater Toronto area. I don't even know for sure if he does play goalie. Let's be honest. He could be doing anything right now.
He's
but
lying.
Sin and I are here.
He's sweeping chimneys, man. He's still got it.
For anybody who doesn't know, Endo has shared this picture before. I will try to track it down of him as like a 2-year-old and his mom. Keep in mind, this would have been in what, 1999? And his mom dressed him up. Swear to God, he looked like a chimney sweep from 18th century England.
Oh my God.
It's one of the
He's got to do a
funniest.
horrible Cockney accent too.
God, I'm not even going to try.
Mary Poppins.
Oh, well, Sin, at the very least, I'm glad you're here with me as we're going to talk about, well, let's be honest, there's going to be a lot of viewer questions today because we are in, the doldrums of the summer, now into the early stages of September. There's still not a lot going on from the NHL perspective, at least. We are going to get to talk about the women's game a little bit with the PWHL and some of the things going on there. It's a big, big month for that new league. I will let you kind of decide where we want to go for this week's show, given that, again, we could go into like the smaller news deal, or we have a loaded viewer questions section today. Choose your own adventure book for this week.
Yeah. Well, let's just delve in. I want to say, you probably have it on somewhere, but you said choose what I want to do. I want to talk about the Sens a little bit. I think they're doing a pretty damn good job.
So that was probably the biggest piece of news.
Lots of guys locked into like $8 million deals. And while some people are like, oh, have they all earned them yet? It's like, dude, like good young talent. They have them locked up. They're at least not going to necessarily hit the Mark Stone situations. Erik Karlsson, like I like it for them. And I think they're doing a good job.
So the big news of the week. Oh, by the way, this podcast is brought to you by our friends at manscaped.com. Use code Tougie for 20% off your order and free shipping. That's code Tougie, Tougie, at manscaped.com. Get the best tools for the job. And the Ottawa Senators might be getting the best tools for the job in terms of trying to eventually win a Stanley Cup. What Sin is obviously referring to here was the big news of the former 5th overall pick back in 2020, defenseman Jake Sanderson, signing an 8-year extension worth just over $8 million per season. That starts after this upcoming season. He's on the final year of his entry-level contract. So they are investing heavily into Jake Sanderson after just one season at the NHL level. That said, again, Jake Sanderson drafted in 2020. The following year, he goes to the NCAA with the University of North Dakota, puts up 15 points in 22 games. His sophomore season, 26 points in 23 games, and then goes to Ottawa last year, 32 points in 77 games as a 20-year-old player. He turned 21 in July.
Yeah.
That is the type of player that you bank on.
Yeah,
flat out. And they caught a fair amount of heat in that 2020 draft. I'd say for taking Jake Sanderson instead of Jamie Drysdale. A lot of people thought Drysdale would be that 5th overall pick and the first defenseman off the board. That was not the case. Drysdale obviously has had an interesting developmental history so far. Suffered a big injury last season. Didn't get to play that much with the Ducks. But Sanderson, I thought last season showed that promise, whether it be from that points perspective, whether it be from a more analytical approach. You can look at like the JFresh card for Jake Sanderson, for example, which is very, very strong for someone who had the ice time of about a second pair defenseman. I do not blame the Sens whatsoever for investing in this guy. And I'm right there with you. It's like right now, this upcoming season, and obviously we'll talk about the Sens in our season previews, which will be coming up later on this month. looking to have some special guests on for those episodes as well. We'll see what happens. But right now, Timmy Stützle starting an 8-year deal this upcoming season worth $8.35 million, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, he's good. I don't think people realize just how good he is.
Yeah. Also from that 2020 draft, 2 picks before Sanderson. So, I mean...
Yeah. I wonder whose pick that was.
Yeah, that was... There was a trade involved there, but I don't quite remember what team was involved.
It's all right. It's good.
Yeah. But Stützle had 90 points, 39 goals last season in 78 games as a 21-year-old. He finished the season at 21 years old. They have invested in Tim Stützle. They have 5 more seasons of Brady Tkachuk, 4 more seasons of Drake Batherson. Shabbat's under contract for 5 more years. Now, technically, you have Jake Sanderson for 9 seasons in terms of that core. And then Josh Norris is going to be a big question this season. He might be the biggest X factor for that team. Yeah. Coming off of a big injury as well last season, was held to just 8 games. But that was the first year of his 8-year deal at $7.95 million. So they have certainly invested into that youth, that core, the return from the Erik Karlsson trade in particular. It's just now a question of, can they find that supporting cast? And obviously, they brought in Claude Giroux last year. They have Vladimir Tarasenko. Excuse me. Jake Chikrin's on the roster. Still a little bit worried that their goaltending is going to be Jonas Korpisalo and Anton Forsberg, although Anton Forsberg did very well last year when he was healthy. So they are an interesting team, and I think they're right there in the mix.
Did you mention Giroux? They still have Giroux, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They got Claude Giroux for 2 more seasons.
Yeah. I thought it was a 3-year. Yeah.
The Atlantic Division, which again we'll talk about in full soon, but the Atlantic Division is kind of crazy because you have the Bruins, who are going to be trying to hold on and are still going to be a good team. Well, they obviously won't be 65 wins good. Will they be playoff good? We don't even know. There's the Toronto Maple Leafs, who will be playoff good. The Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, should be playoff good. And then you have the Sabres, the Sens, the Red Wings, and the Habs, all of whom have done good things lately, are on the come up, and every single one of those respective fan bases should have optimism that their team could make the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
that division.
There's no bottom feeder in that division. There's simply no bottom feeder in that division anymore. It's going to turn over. Someone's getting pushed out. Multiple teams are probably getting pushed out in the next couple of years. I hate to say it, but you got to think the Bruins are going to be one of those, just with the way the roster is constructed and what they've lost over this this off season and just how they went out. It's been sometimes like it's one of those moments of like life comes at you quick, and I experienced it with the Sharks. We took that 1 year off the playoffs. Everyone's like, oh, they're going to have to rebuild now. Came back multiple years, make the conference finals in 2019. Then all of a sudden, it's just gone. Right. And, you had the Bruins, 65 wins, a heartbreaking playoff performance, we'll say.
Yep.
And questionable coaching decisions. Everything kind of culminated in shit. They had it right in the palms of their hands. They flopped, and then now you lose Krejci, Bergeron, and wow, and then on the flip side, you have all these other young teams who've been pushing. Do they have enough to get over? Who knows? But
yeah, the Bruins are that team in that division that even though they're like, okay, they have, presumably they'll be keeping Swayman. They have McAvoy and Pasternak signed. They're the ones that you look at because, okay, what are the Maple Leafs going to lose? William Nylander is more than likely out the door, but they still have Matthews, they still have Marner, they still have a lot of their pieces intact. Tampa, the biggest issue with them now is time. Stamkos, Kucherov, Hedman, all getting older. They keep losing pieces. They're in a kind of similar spot to the Bruins, I guess.
Yeah, they're more slowly bleeding, though, I would say. Right. Like the Bruins, they almost seemingly... I mean, when you lose 2 centermen, basically, like in a single season. That's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah, I feel like they're in a situation where the Bruins were like 5 years ago or so, where you're like, they're not done, but they do have to find the right pieces,
Mhm.
and it's tough to do that with how much like draft capital they've given up, so on and so forth. So
yeah, and they're definitely slowly bleeding. The thing that they're bleeding most of all is depth, which is extraordinarily important in the playoffs. They still have a good core, as you said. They are aging. They still probably have a couple good years of prime left, but even if they never make it back, they won 2 straight and made it another time. So I mean, mission accomplished if you're a Lightning fan.
Yeah, I mean they can't, you can't complain at that stage. But yeah, I mean just getting back to the Sens in a general sense, they are right there in that mix. Obviously Sabres fans are super hyped up about what this team could be with the Tage Thompsons, Rasmus Dahlins of the world. Red Wings fans as well. That team's taken a bit of a different approach. They do have the Lucas Raymonds and the Moritz Seiders, but then obviously they filled out their roster a lot through free agency. And then Montreal's in that spot too, where it's like, okay, you don't have Carey Price anymore, but the emergence of Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki being, I think, honestly, probably better than I think any Habs fan could have hoped for after that. After that trade, I think a lot of people are like, okay, Nick Suzuki, former first-round pick, like he's going to be good. I don't know if Habs fans expected him to be captain material, especially at such a young age. So that division is a minefield, and you can look at other divisions and say, okay, they're we both know this. You look at the Pacific Division with the San Jose Sharks. You're not going to make the playoffs. The Canucks and the Ducks have some issues. The Central has Chicago and Arizona. And look, we'll talk about the Connor Bedard effect. I'll be shocked if Chicago's back in the playoffs. And then the Metro has a team like Philly. So it really is just that Atlantic Division that kind of stands up above the rest.
Yeah, definitely.
The other NHL-focused thing to talk about outside of the Jake Sanderson signing, which, again, to just recap that, it's a damn good signing. Matvei Michkov and his lack of playing time so far in the KHL. This was a potential fear, but I don't think people thought it would be this, I guess, to the forefront already. Now, in fairness, he's only played in one regular season game with SKA St. Petersburg, but even in their preseason, they've played 4 games, by the way, so far this season. Even in the preseason, he wasn't getting that much playing time. In the draft this year, you, along with most people, Montreal, Arizona, and then obviously Philadelphia, who ended up with him, they were waiting to hear the name Matvei Michkov. He falls to Philly at 7. How do you feel as a Sharks fan? It's very early, but if Matvei Michkov was a Shark, how concerned do you think you would be right now?
Pretty concerned.
Barely playing.
And I'd be wondering why the hell they're doing that. It almost feels like spite that he's gonna leave, so they're like gonna fuck up his development.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's what you are worried about. And I didn't think a team would risk doing that. Like, they're technically risking their own money and stuff like that. I don't know. It's kind of nuts, but he's clearly good enough, like, to be playing. I don't understand why you wouldn't. So it just seems like there's something else. And maybe this is the reason why so many teams didn't want to take the risk. And I'm starting to understand, obviously, a bit more. Everyone always said there's some issues, but it was mostly all centered around personality or whatever. Like, I don't know. And probably some, aversion to Russia with everything going on, understandable. But yeah, I just don't. I was happy kind of with anyone that we were going to grab. I think Will Smith's going to be good. I feel like Michkov better fit with our kind of development plans, being probably 3 years away, but insanely obviously 3 years away given the contract, but just insanely talented. But yeah, if they're all of a sudden his development's going to be stunted, that's your that initial advantage of taking him and stuff like that, that's starting to melt away if he's gonna like get sat and ride the pine for no reason, seemingly no reason other than to spite the fact that he might leave or something. I don't know.
I mean, it's interesting too because there are other younger talents, relatively high profile talents on that team. for the Minnesota Wild, a former, I believe, first-round pick, and Murat Kuznetsov is on that team, and actually he was an early second-rounder, but he's playing. Ivan Demidov, who is projected to be a top 5 pick this year, is getting playing time, and obviously he is younger than Michkov. And then you also get the NHL legend himself, Alexander Galchenyuk, playing in every single game. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, like, is it an attitude issue? We don't really know. Or is it spite? Regardless, it does seem crazy from the outside looking in to not play this kid.
Yeah.
Given what he was able to do at the lower levels, not even at the lower levels last season. Dude, in the KHL last season, with Sochi, 20 points in 27 games as a 17-year-old. Or he was 17, 18-year-old season. It's insane. It's insane that they're not playing him or not loaning him back out. And especially, too, you would think, and maybe I'm just totally wrong here on how people would view things, but I would want to treat, like, if I was the club that was bringing up a lot of these younger talents, I would want to treat them well. Because you get to spotlight them as a young kid and say, come watch our guy.
Yeah.
He goes to the NHL. And then much like Pavel Datsyuk and so many others, they can come back when they're older, and then you can capitalize on their fame that they had in North America and say, our guy's back. Let's celebrate him in the twilight of his career.
It's short-sighted as hell if that's what's going on.
Right. So it's one of those weird things. I'm really intrigued to kind of follow along with this. I know a lot of people who don't like the Flyers are like, yes, good. Sit him. But no, it's just... I hope he gets the proper amount of playing time that he should, because for all intents and purposes, if this kid was Slovakian, he probably would have been the second overall pick. It just really seems to be that Russian factor.
Yeah.
So he's in a bit of a tough spot, but again, I'm sure certainly I will be, and I know the hockey world in general will be following along with his development throughout this season. I mentioned the PWHL, and I wanted to quickly talk about this because we are now starting to get word about some of the signings heading into their inaugural season coming up. Some big names off to Montreal, headlined by Marie-Philippe Poulin, which I'm not really surprised that she ended up in Montreal. I mean, it's almost been too perfect how some of these signings have lined up. So I don't know if there's any kind of funny business going on with how it's lined up, or if it's just like these teams realize like we need that player.
Yeah.
Because Montreal getting Marie-Philippe Poulin is perfect. Toronto getting Sarah Nurse is perfect for them. The Boston franchise getting Hillary Knight, which I am so fucking excited about, formerly of the Boston Pride, and she's going to be back playing in Boston as kind of the mainstay there. They also got Megan Keller on the team. Like, we're starting to kind of see, again, each team kind of get their own star players or group of star players, which I think is kind of perfect. And then in a way, what they've decided to do with their draft is interesting. Players must declare for the draft to be eligible for this upcoming season. They are essentially not allowing people to be like, nope, I'm staying out of the draft and handpicking where I want to go, because they are trying to make the league as balanced as possible through this draft, which I like, instead of it's just being like, oh, well, this team's stacked and they just run the table. Like, they need this to be a competitive league, at least as much as it can be.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it's a busy month for them. They do have the draft coming up later this month. I haven't seen anything in regards to Ottawa or Minnesota in regards to, actually, in fairness, Ottawa actually just announced today who was signing there. The general managers are being named for the teams. Like, a lot is happening in really a very short amount of time. But that draft is on September 18th, just 10 days away. And again, they're going to be starting play this January. So I'm excited. Minnesota has the number 1 pick. It's a snake. By the way, how do you feel about this then? It's a snake draft. So
It's
Minnesota
interesting.
has the first
Get
pick
the
of round
first,
1,
and
and then
then
does
the
not pick
12th.
again until the end of round 2.
Yeah, that's
Huh.
cool.
Yeah, through 15 rounds technically. So I don't know, man. I'm excited, and I'm rooting for this so badly, especially too because we've said it on the show before. The Hillary Knights of the world, who is now in her early to mid 30s, she needs to be the last generation, and her generation, the Maria Fluplans of the world, they need to be the last ones to have gone through this bullshit with these
Yeah.
leagues. Like really, like the Haley Wickenheiser era should have probably been the last era to have to go through this nonsense of like, well, shit, where the hell are we playing? What's the goal as a professional women's hockey player aside from the Olympics? Hopefully, this is finally it. Please, it should be. Aside from that, you know what's funny? I had somebody ask on Twitch the other night. So, did you guys get back to State of Decay 2? And the answer is yes, we did. We completed the game on base difficulty. There's 5 difficulty settings, so you can imagine the difficulty scale. And we went up by 2.
Yeah, to Nightmare or something.
Jesus Christ.
Or Dread, I forget which one it was. It's so much fun, man.
If you want to have fun with friends, I highly recommend State of Decay 2. It is available through Game Pass, and it's just that idea of, man, if you want to live in that scavenge for practically nothing because everything's been taken, gotta fight off the hordes of zombies at a time. They'll just break into your base and try to kill you. It's wonderfully fun. And
yeah, I've been loving when we upped the difficulty immediately. Like, you just felt it. Like everything was like just harder to find stuff. I mean, people were like Juggernaut, right? Was breaking into our base. Like I was like, oh yeah, this is it's definitely a couple steps up, and I like it like that. Like I think it definitely gave a better feel to it, because before it was just we were just fucking around. There's no danger of dying, I felt like, when we were playing like on that lower difficulty, especially with 4 people. And then you and I were playing, I think we took out 1 plague heart, just 2 of us on that difficulty, and we both almost died. Right. And then you almost died several times by running over a bloater. Just laying in the middle of the road.
It is such a fun game. I wanted to bring that up, though, as kind of the transition into our final topic here before we get into viewer questions to round this out. And that is more NHL 24 conversation from video game to video game here, because today, Friday, September the 8th, was a big day in regards to updates in regards to NHL 24. I'm going to keep saying the word regards, as I nearly lost my train of thought there. But they put out a gigantic blog post detailing a whole bunch of changes in the aftermath of the community playtest. It's a beta. It's basically the same thing. At least I will be using the term beta. God damn it. I wanted to go through these and kind of get your thoughts on this as well. I was tempted to put out a video, but I'm like, I want to bounce this off and see if, like, okay, do I feel this way? Do you feel differently? Yeah. And see if there's that kind of middle ground to find there. Obviously, in the past, at the end of August, they announced that they were bringing back hybrid controls for players and giving the option for the goalie controls to go back to the way they were, while still leaving people with the option of using the new tethered system. I don't really see a fault there. I mean, again, the hybrid controls, the biggest beneficiaries of that are people with physical disabilities who might not be able to play the game otherwise because of a complicated control scheme. So I give them all the credit in the world for that. The goalie controls, hey, at least now people can choose. Again, I still think people would have found it to be all right had they given it a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But in regards to the, see, I told you I was going to keep saying that, the sustained pressure system and the tuning, one of the biggest aspects of the, I guess, the play test and the complaints that stood out, the idea of just how effective puck possession was in filling up that meter. They have now tuned that down by 30% Quote, we have lowered the impact that possessing the puck in the offensive zone has with regards to building up the pressure. The value of possessing the puck has been lowered by 30%, with shots on net and big hits in the offensive zone now being strengthened as the best way to build sustained pressure. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Good
I mean, it's I didn't mind it how it was before. I think you could argue it went up too slowly. I think the biggest thing was that it didn't decay fast enough when you cleared the puck. And I think that was the biggest hindrance because it was more easy to snowball. But they did make a change to that as well, which I'm sure you're talking about in a sec. But yeah, like I'm fine with it. Yeah, I don't think possession itself should be what gets it up. I think passing, shooting, forechecking hard, hitting guys, those are things that should crank it. That should like really have the biggest effect on it. And I think they did a great thing. They didn't just take away that having possession in the zone does it. They tuned it down, which I think is important. Because you can't just make those huge changes to this thing that you created, which is objectively good. I don't care what anyone says. It's an objectively good feature, and if you don't like it, it's a fucking skill issue. Or you're playing like 1v1 or 3s, which why are you doing that to yourself?
Yeah. The other change in regards to that pressure system, the decay rate of the meter has been increased by 100%. Quote, the new tuning sees the meter decay faster once the puck is cleared outside of the defensive zone by the defending team. This creates a more authentic feel to sustained pressure, as the offensive team must keep a consistent attack in the O-zone to activate full pressure. Again, I think good.
Knocked
that idea
of
clearing the puck means a
just
lot
flip
more.
It out sometimes, yeah. And I wonder, and I hope, I like... Their dump thing, I think it was a little too feathery and too nerfed, the new dumping system. I would like to see it in between what it was in the beta and what it was last season. Because in the last one, if you flipped it out from your own end, it could go down for icing. So I think you want be able to just flip it to center ice. Think Florida Panthers in the playoffs where they just flip it to center ice, clear the pressure, and maybe pick it up and get a rush back the other way. That should be a go-to to just get, relieve the pressure in your own end. If you're able to get possession, you just want to flip it out. It just really puts more emphasis on getting to loose pucks, forechecking for the offense, and then just flipping it out for the defense. And now they're actually going to be rewarded for that with that faster decay. It's good. And it's going to just completely disrupt the meta of, if you get a turnover in your end, you can take it on for a rush back the other way, full speed, everyone. You may even get an odd man rush depending on where that puck was turned over, which is so silly in NHL 23 when you think about it.
The other complaint that I've seen that people are like, how didn't you fix this, was the idea of there's a red rectangle on the ice. Give me the ability to turn that off. And I'm like, we're just going to complain no matter what, aren't we?
Yeah.
Just the idea of there's a red rectangle on the ice. It's that's not
tells
realistic.
You stuff.
Have you watched what the fucking sport looks like on TV? The animated boards, the logos, where the old playoff logo used to be, how that changes to a different brand's logo every time they change zones? Come on now. Let's not be ridiculous here and be like, that's unrealistic. Watch a hockey game right now and you'll realize what it looks like. The other big aspect, of course, of the game is tied in with the pressure system. It is the goalie fatigue system. And there are 4 noted changes in regards to this. The first being that goalies recover when the puck exits the defensive zone. Well, previously, goalies would only regenerate their energy during active play when the puck crossed over the opposing team's blue line. This resulted in the goalie remaining tired for too long and throwing too many desperation saves. We've changed this to now by having goalies start to recover immediately when the puck exits the zone, which, again, good change.
Yeah.
The fatigue meter is now always visible as well for goaltenders. Actually, in a general sense, to create a better overall understanding of the state of goalie fatigue during gameplay, the respective fatigue meter will be visible at all times. This will enable players to attack and defend better based on always knowing the relevant state of their goaltender's fatigue, which, again, I think is great. If your goalie's tired, you're going to want to turtle up a little bit more, but if he has that stamina, yeah, you're probably okay to attack because he's not going to end up getting this desperation save because, again, he is tired and having to make that extra effort for a high difficulty save. Goalie attributes have been increased or have increased impact on drain and recovery. We've increased the impact that a goalie's respective attributes have on both energy drain and recovery. This means breaking down a higher rated goalie will be more difficult as opposed to a lower rated goalie, as they'll recover energy faster and fatigue more slowly. Again,
Yeah.
in theory, this is the big one for Ultimate Team versus franchise.
I was just gonna say that's more
pro.
of a 1v1 thing, be a pro too. I cannot wait to try be a pro with the pressure system, man. Like, I'm so excited. I don't even care that there's like not too many changes made to the mode itself or any at all. Just because the gameplay has been so drastically changed, I think it's so fresh. Like, the hitting, it's so good.
Well, they have made changes to that. We'll get to it in a second. The last goalie thing was that goalies are now more stable when rested. Goalies have been tuned to be more stable and positional when above 50% energy. This means you'll see fewer desperation saves overall when a goalie is in what is deemed a reasonable rested state, which I don't disagree with it. I think, again, it's that idea of, like, you really do want those desperation saves to come out when the goalie is overly tired, not when he's kind of tired. Because that was resulting in a few too many examples of especially AI goalies flopping around in that tech test there. So, again, through 2 sections so far, knocking it out of the park in regards to the changes that they are making. That brings us to their physics-based contact changes. First and foremost, big checks deal slightly more stamina damage. Any big checks that are landed during gameplay will add more stamina damage to the target player, and bringing into play the longer recovery get-up states. So heads up. You try to straight line somebody and you get leveled on the boards, you have to pay for it now. You're not just going to be able to get up, get the puck back immediately, and keep going full speed. The other change. Yeah, I was going to say, I leave it open for you at some point to step in, but at the same time, I also know that you've read over this so far too, and it's the idea of, like, there's nothing to disagree with so far. The second thing in regards to the physics, player size carries more impact on reverse hit outcomes. Player size now factors more predominantly into the reverse hits that connect during a game. Smaller players will be far less likely to run through a larger player due to a size mismatch, where a larger player will be far more likely to run over a smaller player, which, again, that's what you should have. The positives and the negatives to running a smaller build with more speed or a bigger build with more size and being able to utilize that properly.
Because I would run because before, when hitting was based more, like, there was a little bit of a size effect, but it was really based on what felt like speed, which is why you saw guys, running people over at the blue line, starting way back near the hash marks to get a running start and coming out of nowhere, it seemed. But yeah, because I would run people over with like a 5.7 sniper. It was just silly. It kind of was silly. And we saw it too in the games that we cast at. I think particularly Afe used to do that constantly with his tiny sniper build. He knew how to work it so well that he would run people over, like, from certain angles and with certain speed. It was funny as hell to watch. Huh?
And then he'd hit people on the counter because he had that speed to build.
Yeah. So I think if you're going to call it a physics-based contact system, size should be definitely taken into account, because that's a real big factor.
Performing a reverse hit results in some slowdown. We've added a slowdown event that occurs when any reverse hit is thrown during gameplay to provide more balance to the mechanic. This will address the issue where a player can reverse hit a defender and then continue at full speed up the ice.
That was silly, yeah.
Another positive change. And then hip checks in low speed situations. The relative speed of both the puck carrier and the defensive player throwing the hip check will now be taken into consideration in these game situations, resulting in less dramatic hip checks during slower pace of play moments. That's another thing I think that needed to be changed. I saw quite a few examples of somebody back checking, going into a hip check, and barely tapping the guy's leg and still knocking him over.
Yeah.
It was obvious. Slight tweaking, tuning was needed there, and we have it. The only other thing in regards to the checking and the physics, and I have totally lost what it was, but there was something else that I saw people kind of mention in regards to this that they either hadn't addressed yet or they didn't address it to the kind of extent that people thought it should be. But at a base level, I'm perfectly fine with this. I think it keeps the checking system as a very strong defensive tool. And at the same time, offensively, there are ways to counteract it. Like the players who are very, very good with the speedy and more agile builds that will be able to avoid the checks are going to make people look fucking foolish. That's just a fact. And then the people who are very, very good at utilizing a bigger build, like I do think this makes, while I don't necessarily think it'll become a thing at an esports level, it does make bigger builds more usable in a general sense, potentially in a high-end situation as well. I mean, again, we'll kind of see what's going to happen.
The meta will form itself. Like, there's going to be a meta. You always hope for the day where there is no discernible meta, but that's never going to be a thing because someone's going to figure out something and, figure out a way to be most efficient. And that's honestly, sometimes it may not even be the most efficient. It's just that someone starts doing it, they get good results, other people start copying, and then it's the meta. Like we've made crazy things work like that aren't meta, but we ran a whole team of enforcers. We played some people in one of the leagues that we had been in at some point who were like combined group of some of the most decent people in that league, and we fucking raffle stomped them with meme builds like.
Max size enforcers, man. They can be fun. They can be effective because of the reach. Primarily.
Yeah, the reach, like crushing people, and we were able to forecheck and maintain possession. It was so much fun.
It's one of those things where, kind of like you mentioned, metas in games, a competitive game, will always form. It does not matter if it's NHL, if it's Madden, if it's a shooter. There will always be meta. Builds, meta tactics in these games. That's just the way it works. And that's why so often in games like Call of Duty or Battlefield, you'll see the meta change throughout the game's lifetime because they're like, oh shit, that gun's too strong. Okay, this one's the good one now. Like, that's just what happens. And they have taken that into mind as well with the next two sections. The first one being the lacrosse deke has changed. And this was one that I recall telling people, hey, calm down, they're fixing it. I recall other people in the game changers, the design council, telling people to calm the hell down. But people still freak the fuck out. The lacrosse deke's effectiveness has been changed as it is now more directly tied to the deking ability than an individual build has. So again, you will not, in the launch of this game, be able to Michigan with Ryan Reeves like you would be able to with Trevor Zegras, as hilarious as that is. And yeah, like no shit, right? Like I get that it's still controversial in a sense to say, okay, you can hit the Michigan with one button. I get that other people want it to be more of a skill thing. At the same time, I saw Eki post a clip on Twitter today about he hit a Zegras flip when he was I think capturing footage in Vancouver, and someone responded with like, "What's that even doing in the game? That's not real hockey." And again, it's one of those things where it's like, what are you watching? The Michigan is a part of hockey. The flip over the net is a part of hockey. It was a part of hockey when it was a part of the NHL 06 intro video, but it just wasn't being done at the highest level like it is now. And Trevor Zegras hit that fucking move in the game. What was it, Sonny Milano that scored on it, I think? Like, it is a part of the thing. Like I said, I get that people might want it to be more difficult, but at the same time, as we talked about on other editions of this show, the game is going to be more tuned towards an offensive side of things. It's going to be more tuned towards highlight reel goals. Because, again, most people want to be able to replicate the goals that are scored in real life, not the, oh, that team did so great holding the other team to a 17-shot effort and they got the shutout. That's not often what people fucking talk about. But we all, I think, remember how the video of Trevor Zegras scoring the Michigan took off on Twitter. That thing got millions of views. When's the last time a 17-save shutout was the talk of fucking social media? You know, it's just the way it is. The Michigan needed to be changed in NHL 24, and it is. I don't see a problem with it at this stage.
No, I'm one of the biggest proponents for wanting defenders to have more tools and defenders being not given enough love, because I've said it all the time. Kids want to be able to deke through entire teams. The good news is they can't do that anymore. Like, you can't. It's because they're trending it more towards a team game, as it should be. You can still do dekes. You can still have those highlight reel plays. But to get into those positions, it's a lot harder to do, because one of the big reasons is, well, the new hitting system, but defenders have a hell of a lot more tools now. We can use stick lift again. They're fixing poke check, so it doesn't slow you down into quicksand when you do it once. And you can now have battles in front of the net again. Like, you can bump people in front of the net. It's no longer an automatic interference penalty as it was last year, which is frustrating as fuck to me, because that was like one of the best ways to defend the front of the net. I want to say NHL 20 was the last time you were allowed to do it, or maybe 21, and then it was 22 and 23 where it was an automatic interference penalty. And that was the best way I was disrupting people from trying to get deflections or screening the goaltender or getting one-timers. Like, that was such a good way to disrupt the force. I was so good at predicting when that pass was coming or when the guy was going to circle the net that I was just able to shove the guy who was in front. They'd pass it, it'd go through everyone because he was off balance and he couldn't receive the puck. That's back. Like, you can do that stuff again. As a defender, while the pressure system's there, it's balanced, and all the dekes, it's balanced by you having more tools and be given a hell of a lot more leeway than we were in the past. Intercepts are still tricky, but guess what? You can still bump a guy. So I'm going to be doing that a hell of a lot. I got to try to get back into that habit of just trying to bump people before they receive passes and stuff, because it's a great way to play defense.
A great way
play
to
the body, not the puck. How often have you heard that if you played hockey? All the time.
That was the other aspect of complaints that I had heard, was the idea of people got so used in the offensive zone to being able to just hit up on the right stick when the puck was loose to try and get the shot off quickly. Unless you have it, you're going to throw a check. And people, I think, are mad. Some people, at least, are mad that is not a change that was highlighted here. I don't view it as a big deal, because adapt, man. Like, I took one penalty like that in the tech test and then never took one again because I made sure that my guy had the puck before hitting up on the stick to shoot it.
Can be tough for spammers, though, like me, especially for one-timers, and I'm playing on 80 ping. But I haven't run into that issue. Maybe it's because I'm on the point and there's no one near me, so I'm not going to throw the hate animation. But when I've gotten one-timers, it's been fine. But yeah, I don't know. I know some what it is. Eki in particular had been like, yeah, Eki was mentioning, but he was mentioning a lot about one-timers, how he just missed it and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think it's can be unrealistic to say you have to time it perfectly. So I think that there could be something put in there. I don't know.
I think it's one of those things where it's like, let's see the effect that it has on the gameplay at launch. Right? And then maybe it is something that needs to be changed over time. But like I said, I mean, at least for me personally, and it's not like I'm this super high-end player. I'm good at the game. I'm not great at the game. I'm not esports level. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I made the mistake once and then adjusted. And that's me playing as a centerman who is a grinder in front of net, trying to score those type of goals. It's just one of those things where it's like, okay, I think we can stop trying to find every little thing to complain about and say, okay, the big things were changed. Maybe I can try to adjust. Maybe. Some people will never have that attitude, though. In terms of X Factor tuning, there was one big one. Close quarters has been nerfed. They have reduced the distance required to activate close quarters from 30 to 20 feet. They have reduced the accuracy bonus of close quarters by 50% and reduced the accuracy bonus of the close quarters superstar ability, so the silver, by 75%.
Wow.
That's a huge fucking nerf, and honestly,
needed it.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, needed it. Like, it was just make it so goalies wouldn't get animations.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I'm not upset to see them finally make that change. And it's funny, of course, because people are like, oh, you nuked it too much. And it's like, people have been complaining for 3 years about this being the most overpowered fucking ability. And then you change it, and then people are like, no, not like that. Not that much. Now I'm going to have to try something different.
Yeah.
Ew. Speaking of something different, the goaltending, the human goaltending system, the tethering system, they have increased the tether distance. So a human goalie using the tether controls now has an expanded area to move within the control set. They've increased the movement range from 3 feet to 5 feet, allowing for more ability to cut down angles and giving a general overall freedom of movement. They have also increased the instinct boost when correct. So when a goalie guesses correctly, they'll receive a higher boost to their respective save probability. And they have also removed the penalty when you guess incorrectly. So if you guess, so that's the one for me where I'm like, huh. Because initially I thought the system was going to work as in you guess correctly, you get the bonus, but if you guess incorrectly, it lessens your chance to make the save, risk reward. But essentially what it's going to act as now is a boost. And then if you guess incorrectly, if you're still in good position, you can still make the save, which I don't hate. In theory, because there is no negative side to trying it, it should make, much to some people's chagrin, good human goalies even better. But then that's where the team play aspect comes in with the fatigue system.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a big change. They've also reduced the fatigue impact on human goalies. They have slightly softened the over fatigue impact on human goalies. So basically, there is going to be more of an incentive to play with human goalies. They should be better than AI goalies. At least good human goalies will be. Again, I'm very intrigued to see, too, especially, what do most goalies go with? Do they still just go with the old system, or do we see a lot of goalies try this new system, especially after these changes? It's going to be an aspect of the game, especially from the esports scene.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Two more things here. Well, two more little sections. The poke check. This might be the most controversial one. The community feedback they were given was that the poke check has become too difficult to use based on the new tuning changes for 24. Now when I poke check, not only do I recover more slowly, but I incur a speed loss, which allows the puck carrier to easily blow by me if the poke check fails. As a result, they have tuned back the speed loss that was added back to the tuning that it had with NHL 23. I don't think this was necessary. I don't. I know it was somewhat of a popular complaint that missing that first poke check was harsh, but at the same time, I liked the fact that it should be difficult. Like, I view it as a skill gap. The best defenders in the game were going to be the ones that were able to time that initial poke perfectly and not get beat to the outside, especially now that they have checking in their arsenal as well.
I don't mind. I think what happens on like pokes after the first one, like I wouldn't mind that that speed thing taking effect on like the second or third poke. That would prevent spamming, like,
right.
And you don't want spamming. That's okay. So I think the first one shouldn't really hinder you at all if you miss it. And I think when starting on like the second one or something like that, that's when you could, start taking those massive speed losses and stuff like that. Because again, like I just don't. I think to play defense, it's already so much harder just based on how the game's tuned. So you can't. I don't think giving back defensemen certain tools, you're going to fall into that issue again where it's like, okay, well now no one's going to poke because why do that when you could stick, lift, or hit? So I think defensemen need to be able to use all of their tools. And then from there, you kind of balance it. There should still be, obviously downsides with the hitting. There's a downside. You go for a big hit and you miss, you're out of position. You look like a fool. If you poke check from a bad angle or too far away, you can high stick or slash someone. With the poke, it was just like, I think that's too harsh a penalty for trying to use it in like just once. Like, because I found myself really not using it. I did find a workaround though. If you didn't use poke check and instead did skill stick and a small little sweep of your stick, it wouldn't slow you down. So I figured that out, and I was using that little trick a lot, and it works better too, because sometimes when you poke, the puck just stays there. So when you sweep with your stick, that's how much I played freaking defense. Is when you swept it away, the puck would usually go further, and you would maintain more of your speed as well.
Right. No, that's fair. That's fair. Like I said, I don't think it was necessary, but at the same time, as long as they do have that balance to help prevent poke spam, because I think that's how a lot of people read into this, was like, oh god, is poke spam really going to be super, super prevalent again? Which hopefully not. And then the final two things was just tuning down. Yeah. The final two things were tuning down how often the nets come off the moorings and how often the glass breaks. I know from an online perspective, people are still just like turn it off in general, because people...
Or just make it not stop play. At least the glass breaking. It shouldn't stop play. It's just cracked. It's not like the glass shatters.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from a realistic perspective as to why, like, oh, the glass broke, we got to stop it. Like I said, people from an online perspective have that standpoint of, like, there should be nothing. Like, again, the reason why presentation is what it is right now and is so minimalistic is online. It's that idea of the feedback that they had gotten, not just from esports people, YouTubers, and streamers, but in general, because people have to remember they get feedback from a variety of different places, not just the online community. What games have turned into is that idea of the less loading that I have to sit through, the less times I have to hit A to get to the gameplay, that's the way to go, because that's the way other games have gone. They followed suit. Does it suck for somebody like me who loves the full presentation? Yeah. Of course, I want to get that full immersive atmosphere of these intros. I want the fucking lineups to be shown. I want the fucking national anthems back. But at the end of the day, I do feel like people like me are probably in the minority. And then,
yeah, like it's good for a single player experience, but it doesn't really belong online, because most people don't give a fuck online. You're just trying to play as many games as possible.
Right. And at the same time, it's like, okay, cool. Well, they can take the time and resources to add that back in. What does that take precedence over in terms of what they're going to add in? And yeah, even for me, it's like, if you're like, hey, would I want cross-platform roster sharing, franchise changes, Be a Pro changes, or this presentation switch? It's like, well, obviously it's not going to be the latter. But
yeah,
overall, the good thing is I think they have made fair, balanced changes, and I do still think NHL 24 is on a good track here to be the best game of the last two console generations. Like, again, 100%. I'm still someone that thinks NHL 14, which is held up by a lot of people as like the grail.
It's overhyped.
It is overhyped, but the reason why it's overhyped is because it was a good game, and we haven't seen too many good games since then.
Yeah, like I know I maybe it's unfair you're comparing it to like the gameplay now, but like some people claim that it's better than the gameplay now. I'm like, it simply isn't. I like the pace of game better. It's quite a bit slower. Like play a game of NHL 23 and then play a game of NHL fucking 14. You're gonna feel like you're skating in quicksand. Like it's pretty nuts. But I like the pace of game. But I mean, it just like the AI was atrocious. It's great for nostalgia. I had a fun time playing it for the bit of time I did. But like, I don't know. It's just. It's the nostalgia, and I think the bias of what game came directly after that for the new gen when the Xbox One came out, and NHL 15 was this bare bones thing. While it had decent gameplay, it had nothing else.
Yeah. And not to talk about that game again. NHL 24, less than a month away.
I can't wait, dude. Like, I have such a good feeling about the game, and I think it caters directly to what I like to do, which is forecheck. I can't fucking wait to play Be a Pro. Like, it'll be my first complete Be a Pro series since, like, I can't remember the last time. NHL 19 or 20, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe 21.
I don't have plans to do anything Ultimate Team related, but I am very heavily, like, obviously franchise is going to be there. We're going to play a lot of Eishel as we do. Yeah. I might even dip my toes into the Be a Pro landscape this time out, depending on how the AI gameplay feels.
I don't know if I've ever mentioned it here, but did you know my Be a Pro videos used to fucking blow my franchise videos out of the water view-wise? Yeah, I used to be a Be a Pro guy, like, primarily. Like, NHL 17 and 18 was, like...
And it's time to return to those days.
Yeah, because honestly, at times I enjoy it more. because for freaking franchise, unless you're giving yourself challenges, it gets redundant after a while.
That is fair. So with that, let's get into however many viewer questions you can stomach here. We have quite a few at this stage, and again, as always, we normally start off the show with these, but again, hey, we changed things up this time. But as always, the link to the Discord is in the description, whether or not you're watching us on the YouTube side of things or listening on your audio platform of choice. And well, here we go. We start off with One Wheelchair Hulk. Who are the most surprising players still on the free agent market, which allowed me to go and look at who is on the free agent market?
Domish. Da.
He's the biggest one, really. Like, him and Patrick Kane are the two biggest names that are still out there. Tatar is a bigger surprise than Kane. Phil Kessel, Zach Parise, Jonathan Taves.
Those don't surprise. Yeah, no, actually, yeah, Kane and Kessel and whoever the hell else you said. Who the fuck was it before that? What did you say before Kessel? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Parise. Those two don't surprise me as much. Maybe Parise a little bit because he's a great role player at this point, but they're kind of towards the end of their careers, Probably want a severance package.
Nick Ritchie, Paul Stastny.
Thick Ritchie.
Max Comtois.
Really?
Jesse Pugliarvi, but he's coming off of, I think, another double hip surgery.
Remember, Comtois was supposed to be this great young gun. Now he's a UFA not signed.
I don't think there's any really surprising names that are out there. I think it's a lot of veterans where it's like,
Tatar surprises me the most, I think. Because for a while there, everyone's going after his ass at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he, is a pretty consistent, close to, 15, 20 goal guy. 48 points last year, not that far removed from 60 with Montreal. Yeah. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm not all that surprised, but a lot of the other options are guys that are kind of veterans, and you'd think that these teams would want to check the youth out first.
Yeah.
To see, can that guy make the team? And if he can't, well then cool. Let's bring in Derek Brassard and see if he is a better fit for the team. So yeah, outside of Thomas Tatar, it's nothing too crazy. 1 second here. My goodness, sorry, the dog was barking and I didn't know if Fiance was up. From RG Dust, what's taking so long with releasing the 2018 Team Canada report? So I didn't mention this in regards to... What was that?
I said, what?
Don't you stone cold me. Ridiculous. I didn't mention this in regards to our NHL section because there still isn't anything to say. Apparently there was the internal investigation. Now
that 2018. I thought they were talking about an Olympic or a
no. So yeah, this is the what the hell happened? Are people going to get prosecuted for this? This was supposed to come out at the beginning of the summer. It is now September. I guess there was the initial the initial investigation. Now it's a police investigation that's active and ongoing. Obviously, anytime one of the Carter Hart privated his Instagram, and people are just like, oh, well, there you go. Something's going to come out. He was involved. And the Flyers are going to cut ties. It's just, that's the thing that sucks about this is I understand people wanting answers and wanting to know, but at the same time, we don't fucking know yet. And I get that it's frustrating with the idea of this was supposed to be out by now, but clearly they're doing their due diligence in terms of researching this and wanting to make sure that that they get it right. And the reason why I say that is a name that comes to mind for me is Matt Ariza, who was a punter for the Buffalo Bills, and a civil suit came out that accused him and others in a sexual assault. I think technically you could use stronger terms than that. Within a couple of days, he was released by the team. And then after a criminal investigation in which no charges were filed, they discovered he wasn't even there in terms of whatever happened. Like, if something did happen, for sure, this guy was not involved. And now a year later, he's still waiting to see if he's going to get another job. He's 23 years old.
Who was that again?
Matt Ariza. Who again was the punter for the Bills. You need to make sure you get something like this right. Yeah. And obviously, it's a terrible fucking situation for the people involved, the victims of this. And again, you don't want to end up in a set of circumstances where someone gets mislabeled as a perpetrator and then they become a victim in this for being wrongly accused of something that will, and in most cases does, actively ruin your career. It's just a matter of waiting, man. And the thing is, if people were involved and did what they are accused of doing, yeah, they're going to be out of the league. In the meantime, it does suck that, it's like you are left as a fan thinking, hey, what happens? This guy went over and played in Switzerland. He must have been involved. And it's like, you don't know. So all you can do at this point is sit and wait. And this is probably the last time we're going to bring it up until we actually have the findings of said investigations. From Bouncy McBoink Boink, what's an NHL city that is still currently hosting a team that in retrospect maybe should not have brought an NHL team to that city?
None of them.
Yeah.
Winnipeg, maybe. Sorry, but it's going to be a Canada city because they're smaller. There's a hell of a lot more potential for growth in America.
I mean, the two that obviously come to mind are the Arizona Coyotes and the Florida Panthers. That said, you could say Arizona as a state should have gotten a team at some point and would have gotten a team at some point. As we've talked about, it's way too big of a market. The reason why they got the team when they did is that the Canadian dollar was horrific in the mid-90s when the Jets lost the team. It's the same reason why the Quebec Nordiques, or at least one of the primary reasons why the Nordiques went to Colorado just before winning a Stanley Cup. And then the same with Florida. Like, you could argue, like, oh, okay, just to make sure they had a better arena situation long-term. But when they first moved, they were in a decent spot. And then obviously there was the split to where they no longer shared the arena with the Miami Heat. But outside of instances like that, where you could say they would have been a little bit better insulated from potential failure, there isn't a team right now for me where it's like, nope, that city, it shouldn't have a team. I think that you could argue, like, okay, do you need two teams in Florida? Should the Florida Panthers be in Oklahoma City or Kansas City? Maybe. But at the same time, I don't really view it. I mean, that would be the same thing as being like, oh, Buffalo, I mean, you're close enough to Toronto, just go over the bridge. It's like, no, the city of Buffalo deserves a hockey team too.
Yeah, I don't know. This is
it's just
pretty much most teams have a good amount of success, especially when they're successful as a franchise. Like, and in places, I know Canadians are always like, well, look at, we're just successful all the time. That's the only fucking sport that you got there besides Toronto. Who the hell else has multiple, like, other sports there?
Not including the CFL, of course.
That doesn't count. Yeah. You got 13 men. We have a longer field. You have fun. Enjoy.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that doesn't count. Talking about major sports here.
Even, like, Columbus, it's like,
dude, their fan base is pretty nuts. Like,
exactly, their fan base is
they
huge.
were selling out when they were trash. Like, that's impressive for Columbus. Like, this one of those, terrible places that was a terrible place to go in middle America, quote unquote.
Right. It's like, here's a college town for Ohio State, and then outside of that, it's like, oh God. But then they ended up getting the Columbus Crew MLS team in the mid '90s, and then you get the Blue Jackets. I mean, what are you going to argue? At best, it's like, oh, they should have been in Cincinnati to be tied in with the Bengals. I get, like, yeah, there isn't a single team for me that comes to mind where it's like, nope, they should have gone somewhere else. So I'm with you on that. From Tomas. What's more likely in the next 5 years? A Canadian team winning the Cup or Donald Trump getting reelected?
Jesus Christ. What's more likely, they said?
Yeah.
Donald Trump getting reelected?
Yeah.
That's way more fucking likely. Sorry.
Woo.
Like, I don't see a Canadian team realistically threatening that hard.
Wake up.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Smells.
Oh, God. I wasn't sure whether or not to answer this one because it's kind of depressing, but yeah, no,
it's very
you
depressing,
are right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if he goes to jail, he won't go to jail. And even if he, he's not eligible to actually run by law, he'll still run. There'll be a workaround. Powerful and rich people don't go by the same rules as the rest of us. So that's way, way more likely that workarounds will matter. He's still got way big of a base, and the Democrats are intent on running the worst piece of shit that they can. So,
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, okay, realistically, could a Canadian team win a Stanley Cup? Yes. You're looking at Toronto or Edmonton right now as the leaders in that regard, but every single year you have a 1 in 32 chance.
Mm-hmm. And Canadian teams just have less of a chance than non-Canadian teams because there's less of them.
Exactly. Whereas in this lovely country of ours, at least at the moment, cult of personalities are a thing. The cults of personalities are a thing, and that is one of them. So never underestimate it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the fuck this next question means. If you had to choose one horse, what would it be?
If I had to choose one horse?
One horse.
Probably the Royal Destrier. It's one of the fastest horses with great charge damage. And you get it normally in Vlandia. And, you stack some nice chainmail or armor on it, or maybe some lamellar plate, and then you just run wreck shop through the lines of your enemies. Bandlord reference for you guys.
I would choose the horse that is the reason why I stopped playing Red Dead 2. My main man, Butterscotch, who fell off the railroad bridge.
Butterscotch! God damn it, Butterscotch, no!
That is a true story. He fell off the railroad bridge, plummeted to his fucking death, and I haven't gone back since.
Yeah.
He and I went everywhere together. We went to totally not Louisiana. Like, it was great. And then he died.
My second answer is Frost from Skyrim.
I hope you weren't looking for real horses.
Yeah. If you are Brego from Lord of the Rings, who is actually Viggo Mortensen's horse.
Oh, God.
Gotta love a horse after finds you when you've been left for dead. It's a real ride or die right there.
In Butterscotch's case, he died.
He just died. He got rode and died.
From AJ, what's your biggest video game rage moment?
There's a lot. I don't know.
Yep.
I think one of my biggest ones was the old Sega Genesis controllers? As the cord came into the controller, there was that little weird spiral thing that was protecting it from blocking. I used to get mad at Sega, whatever game I was playing, and fucking bite that, and eventually it just ripped open and it exposed the wires on it and shit. I already had the gamer rage at a young age.
Yeah, me too. Too competitive for my own good.
Yeah. Probably because I just got knocked off my bike in road rash, and I'm like, trying to first place every race here.
This is a loaded question because I'm not proud of it, but I'd be lying if I said there aren't examples. That's just a fact.
Broke holes in one of my previous desks.
Jeez. Yeah. I have always been a competitive person. And from like even like as a kid, I think it was like farm league baseball. I must have been like 10. And I struck out, and you'd fucking walk back towards the on deck circle, like I two hands spiked the bat into the ground, and someone's like, I could have bounced into someone, and I'm like, sorry, and then I just run away. It was always just like, I fucked up, I'm mad at myself, or this game's mechanics suck, and I can't exploit them better than somebody else. I'm mad. I mean, it's been a long time, but a couple years ago, we spiked a controller on stream during Madden. I'm
so much better now. Like,
me too.
I stop myself. Like, if I feel myself getting towards that place now, like even close to it, I just like stop because I'm just like, yeah, it's not worth it. It's not healthy. Like, and so it's been such a long time since I'd actually had a moment like that.
Yeah, I think that's why for me, I'm just like, okay, which ones are there? Because it all just kind of like blended together as like past me.
Yeah.
A big part of that, of course, has been, for 3.5 years, I've lived with someone else. And it's like, nope.
I want her to hear me breaking shit.
that side of me is gone because I would be too fucking embarrassed at 29 years old to try and justify to her, well, you see, this in this video game happened. Right there, it's just like she's going to look at me as less of a person. So
yeah.
we're just not even going to deal with it. Yeah, there's been a lot. More often than not, I was a thrower. TV remote, the controller, it was just that action of just fucking throwing.
Yeah,
something.
definitely. I would do that too.
Yeah, so that yeah.
Oh, good. You know what? I have it. I actually broke my finger once.
Oh no!
Oh, it was a small, like tiny, like it's not a huge fucking fracture. It was healed in like literally weeks. They call it like a boxer's fracture. Because and I didn't like really mean to punch something this hard, but like I got out of my chair and I just went to like fucking hit it, and like because I was like mad at it and I was going up to like take a break or get a drink or something, and it swung back at the same time. And when my fist connected, I wasn't like fully like ready, and it just like the worst pain ever. That was like, I want to say that was like 7 years ago, and that was when I was like, maybe I should chill out. And then it got better and better and better, and now I just don't do it.
There's
the
physical pain, and then there's the embarrassment.
Yeah.
Of I just fucking hurt myself for
how fucking embarrassed I was making up stories at the hospital?
Oh, God. I can imagine.
It's like, we called this the boxer's fracture. What'd you hit? I'm like, I didn't. Door was closing. I tried to hold it open.
And they're just like, sure.
Yeah, probably.
God, we're going to have to get Endo's answer for that. Ask him on Twitter or on the Discord. From Pens fan, could you see 2K making an NCAA game with the old All-Pro 2K8 base? No. That is just the sports video game landscape that we live in. It just so happens that things played out the way that they did. NBA 2K won over NBA Live, and that's it. There isn't another company that is going to try to take a piece of the pie away from 2K. They do not view it as worth the risk. Baseball is the same way. MLB The Show won over MVP Baseball. Then again, MVP Baseball was dying out before MLB The Show really even took off. But MLB The Show won. 2K held on for a little bit, and then they said, fuck it. We can't win. NHL. 2K was hanging in there. And then NHL hit him with the fucking death combo, like a prime Mike Tyson of fucking be a pro, EASHL, and Ultimate Team. And no one's tried since. That's just the landscape that we live in, is however it played out. And then obviously with Madden, they had huge competition from NFL 2K5 and then said, we better get the exclusive rights. And now we're coming up on close to 20 years of only having Madden. All-Pro 2K8 was a phenomenal game because it was that 2K football engine, but they didn't have the license for the NFL. and you're just not going to compete in that instance. There have obviously been sports games that are not licensed by the biggest league in the world, but at the end of the day, without that, you're only going to get so far.
Yeah.
Those are just the circumstances. So as much as I'd love for us to get back to the point where 2-3 different developers have their take on a sports game for whatever sport it is, those days are gone, man. They just are. And it sucks because sports gamers have taken a massive hit in terms of the quality that we're fed.
Considering what like initiated the death knell, it was 3 huge modes that are still being played. Like, that was crazy innovation, right? And the EA was probably like, all right, how are we gonna fucking one up these guys? How are we gonna separate ourselves? And crazy innovation, and we're likely not going to see anything that massive again, simply because the market competition isn't there. That's just, as you said, kind of the state of things. But I do like the new devs and how they want to take risks and how they want to make things better. And so might not have any of those big blockbuster moments like those modes, but you never know. We'll see.
It's the video games landscape is just as affected by the capitalist mindset as everyone else.
Yep.
If we're gonna spend this much money, we better take the whole damn pie. Oh, you mean we're only gonna get 25 to 33% of the pie? We're not doing it. If 2K, we can only take EA's, a quarter of EA's player base away. It's not worth it for us financially. That's just what it is. They're not. For the most part, these companies are so risk averse that they're just
And that's why the term capitalism breeds innovation is utter bullshit, kids. It doesn't. It breeds people just trying to protect their jobs and do as little as possible to maintain the capital.
Correct. This is more of a question from me. From J Squared, is the Saudi League for soccer really here to stay, or is it not deserving of the hype? Was Ronaldo right? Could the Saudi spending spree cause inflation balance problems within smaller domestic leagues? Yes, and yes. So a couple of years ago, almost a decade now at this point, China said, we're going to give a bunch of money to a bunch of players who are really good but not the best in the world, and they'll come play for us because they're going to be like, that's more money than I can make anywhere else. And that bubble kind of burst, and it burst a little bit before COVID. It definitely would have burst after that. The whole Saudi approach here, though, they're in general sports washing so that they are more than just the oil-rich country. Like, they want to build up their tourism industry and be a power on a grander scale, essentially. And they're trying to do that through sports, which is what people fucking do. We're not even 100 years removed from Germany in the 30s hosting the Olympics in an effort to sports wash. That's exactly what that was. And yeah, it's no different for the Saudis here. Like, at the end of the day, yes, they are getting players of a higher caliber that they certainly would not be able to get otherwise off of the merits of how good the league actually is. Will that bubble burst? I don't know, because they have the fucking money to burn. They do. Like, they have so much fucking wealth that they can just burn the money so long as they deem it as, this is working. It was the same thing with like Live Golf and everything, and of course that
I was gonna bring that up because I've been So, like, look, the quality of the league, it's not going to be very good. It's just not. You're going to have world-class players that are just like, I don't have to fucking try because I'm getting paid so much goddamn money. Then you have players like, I'm sorry, but Jordan Henderson, Wilfred Zaha, who jumped over from the Premier League, where they're just going to be fucking coasting because they're just like, I can be in a really competitive league, or I can go make a bunch of money and just kind of chill. And that's what they're doing. It is going to continue to cause some issues, like the money situation in general, and I'll cut this a little bit short. The money situation in general for football is out of fucking control. Like, there are players who used to go for $30 million in terms of transfers who are now going for $100 million. Like, it's ridiculous. And a good part of that is, you have clubs that are backed by big oil, let's be honest, that are backed by these oil-rich nations directly.
Manchester City, now Newcastle. Like, it's that whole issue is not going away until someone says, you know what? Dirty money is not really for us. But guess what? That's not going to happen because people say, ooh, money. They don't really care where the fuck it comes from. So, yeah, it's here to stay. Yay, capitalism could be the fucking title of the show. Two left, really quickly. From Scroopy Noopers. Question for the podcast. Who's one NHLer who had an outstanding but often underappreciated performance during the Stanley Cup playoffs? Maybe someone overshadowed by a better performer on their team, they were on the losing end of a final, or whose team was knocked out too early. I'll always sing the praises of Ryan Getzlaf in 2018. Put his team on his back, and neither Calgary nor Edmonton could stop them. Dare I say he was at least better for McDavid for those 2 rounds.
Logan Couture, 2016.
I gotta look up that stat line now for.
He actually, yeah. Or wait, was it that one? But I think I'm actually thinking of 2019, where he was still the leading goal scorer after the Stanley Cup was over. Even though he only played 3 rounds.
For the record, 2017 for Getzlaf, he had 19 points in 17 games. There was actually a couple of times he was over a point per game player in the playoffs. Ryan Getzlaf
he was absolutely dad some of these times, man.
Yeah, he was a big time playoff performer. It's weird to me still that Ryan Getzlaf retired. Yeah. It's one of those ones that's like, oh yeah, he's not playing anymore. Dustin Brown's gone too. Logan Couture, 2018-19, 20 points in 20 games. 2016, 30 points in 24.
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. But I think in that 2019 one, he had like the most goals of any guy, even after the playoffs or at the Stanley Cup wrapped, or at least still a good amount into it. I remember maybe it wasn't even that year, but there was some year where he was the leading goal scorer after they got eliminated in like the second round or conference finals, and it lasted until like the Stanley Cup either being over or very deep into it.
I know a lot of people responded this way on the Discord. David Krejci is one of those guys who was just an insane playoff performer. Speaking of someone where I'm like, oh fuck, he's gone. 2012-13, he had 26 points in 22 games. Was almost a point per game during the Stanley Cup run. He was a prime time playoff performer as well. It's tough, man, to think like, okay, because so much of him in the playoffs, you think of like, oh, like, you know, in terms of like, oh, the guy that didn't win, it's always going to be Jaguar in 2003 that gets brought up. Or then you could have somebody who maybe didn't win, but then went on to win later. That's a bit of a loaded question, I would say. But yeah, David Krejci is probably that first name. And obviously, I think it was probably expected that we would go with our favorite teams because, you know, otherwise you're trying to think of 31 other teams. And it's like, okay. That. Yeah, it can be. I
could just say Connor McDavid every year because he is. He's ridiculous every single year.
I am intrigued, though.
Hard to say that he's overshadowed by anyone.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like you can go back to... So, like, for example, I just randomly clicked on the playoff scoring leaders from 2012. And you'll be able to find someone for every year. 2012, it was Claude Giroux. Guy had 17 points in 10 games for the Flyers.
Damn.
Well, yeah. So that's just one of those things where it's like, oh, shit. You know, and then, of course, up there, it's like, oh, who met in the final? LA and New Jersey. So you have a lot of guys up there. But, yeah, that's kind of good cause to go back and look at some of these random years to see, like, okay, who were the highest scorers from from a team that didn't make the final. And fun fact, Ryan Getzlaf was up there a good amount of times. That was a damn good suggestion. The final question comes from Bud Knight. Referencing Utree. Are the Steelers gone to the Super Bowl? The NFL season started yesterday. I don't know if you paid attention to Chiefs and Lions. I don't know if you're paying attention at all anymore. Like, I know you're a Packers fan, but is there any interest, any hype for...
No, not really. Ever since Nicolas Cage showed up to camp. It was, you know, ever since the crazy rants and the showing up as Nicolas Cage and just the refusal of ownership to ever give a supporting cast to a generational quarterback. I don't have much influence. I'll watch games here and there, but I don't feel like I have a team anymore. Like, maybe I'll go back and I'll probably still keep up with the Packers, but like, it's just, I don't know. That ownership group seems fucking stupid.
Might I recommend, should you get this move to Finland, the team that'll be geographically closest to you, which would be
is it Buffalo?
Well, no, given how much they play in London, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I could get down with it. They have pretty sick unis, right?
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. He's got the long blonde hair too.
Oh God, but I can't bring myself to cheer for Florida.
That's fair.
They do have sick colors, and it's a sick logo. Like, give it up for the Jacksonville logo. That's a good logo.
Overall, NFL wise, I'm hyped as always. Like, it's a big year for the Patriots, especially like a lot of eyes on Mac Jones. And it's like, is he going to be able to actually be the guy? I'm excited though. I'm happy that the Lions won yesterday. Not that I'm like vehemently anti-Chiefs, but I want Lions fans to finally have something good. Like, it's funny for me. Like, I'm in a weird spot now where it's like I'm always going to be a Patriots fan. Prior years, it's like 10 years ago, more than that now, when like the Cardinals made the Super Bowl with Kurt Warner, Larry Fitzgerald. I'm like, yeah, I'm rooting for them. Coincidentally, against the Steelers. I find myself now where I'm like, okay, the Patriots probably aren't going to win for a long time. I find myself looking around the league and rooting for underdogs of like, man, it'd be cool if they did something. The Jacksonvilles of the world. Washington, now that they don't have a gigantic piece of shit as an owner. Detroit, who have just gotten beaten down for so goddamn long. I kind of just get to enjoy football as a whole instead of being so entrenched of like, oh God, Tom Brady's going to retire soon. LOL. Until he finally did. But, and like, okay, don't waste Tom Brady. It's the final years of him. It's like, no, I just get to sit back and enjoy it. And I kind of like, as a Bruins fan, I'm in the same spot. I'm no longer having to be concerned about, oh, don't waste Chara, don't waste Bergeron, don't waste Krejci. I just get to sit back and enjoy. And if my favorite team makes it far, then sweet. I'm going to be right there along with them on the ride. And if they don't, it's like, well, I've seen them win. So, I'm a spoiled sports fan, and I'm well aware of it. So now I just try to enjoy the sport for what it is.
Yeah, I've literally witnessed 0 championships for any of my teams, besides the Packers in 2010. So I guess that. But yeah, I think at the time, yeah, that's all. I don't even know if I had to rank my sports. It's definitely Sharks on top by a mile.
Right.
It would probably have to be Packers second. Like they're who I followed more, but because A's were just like. It was waves for a while. For a while, I would say I've been watching them more than the Packers. I'm thinking like Cespedes, Coco Crisp, and like that era when like one of those, and I'm trying to remember who else. And then this latest one, Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, like, and then we just always, and then they're gone, and then It's like fucking hell. And now this whole thing of just what a disgusting saga. What a huge fall. For that franchise, man. Like, yeah. Fuck John Fisher. Doris, come get your kid.
So I do have a question then. Like, because obviously for me, it's like, all right, it's always been like Bruins, Patriots. Red Sox and Celtics fandom has gone in waves. Like, I'm always a fan, but my interest...
I would
say I'm a little bit fair weather in that regards, but at the same time, it's like for the Celtics...
There's only so much sports you can watch, at least for me.
Yes, exactly. Like, for the Celtics, like, I was all in on what, like, watching a lot as a kid. I'd catch most games in, like, the Paul Pierce era. And then when they got Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett and started, like, really competing, I was all in. I was watching every game. The year they won the title, I watched every playoff game. I was in. And then after that, I'm just like, cool. Same with the Red Sox. Like, fuck, I've seen them win 4 times. So you're going to have those ebbs and flows. I know. I'm sorry. So the A's are still... your favorite baseball team. It's just they're run fucking terribly. Yeah. Did I ever ask you why the Packers over like the Niners or the Raiders?
My dad is a Raiders fan. I don't know. Here's the only thing I could come up with. I used to get babysat before like preschool and kindergarten by our neighbors who were from Wisconsin, and the dad was a Packers fan.
And he never understood a word he said.
I'm from Wisconsin. But yeah, like I don't know. I think maybe I just kind of picked it up over there, and
Cheese in one hand, Miller Lite in the other.
then I think there was a game where the Raiders were playing the Packers, and 41 Robinson at the time. I think it was a safety. Can't remember the first name. 41 safety for the Green Bay Packers in the 90s. Something Robinson, I want to say. He had like two or I don't know, multiple interceptions on the Raiders. My dad was flipping out, and I was having fun cheering against him. And I think that combined with,
We're talking Eugene Robinson.
I think so,
Maybe?
Eugene Robinson.
He didn't play for the Packers for long, but it lined up in the 90s. So.
Yeah,
That would have lined up with about the age
number
that you were.
41, right?
Yeah, number 41, Eugene Robinson.
Yeah, remember that. Yeah.
Perfect. And then basketball-wise, has that ever been a big thing for you? And if so, like, what did it? Because obviously,
It would have been
Lakers.
the Warriors. Like that's who I watched the most. That's who my dad was a fan of. That's kind of how it goes. But I never got into it much. Like I'd watch from time to time. Honestly, the most basketball I ever watched was like the '90s Chicago Bulls, because it's Michael Jordan. It's the best athlete on the planet. Like so, you got to watch it. So yeah, and then I don't know. I played basketball, and then I got disappointed and really lost interest in basketball because I realized I wasn't even gonna grow to be 6 feet. So I'm like, fuck, no point in this shit. And when I got cut from the team in like middle school, I'm like, all right, fuck this.
Fucking out, hate the sport.
Yeah. I
man.
I didn't have that Michael Jordan energy. I didn't come back stronger the next year.
But you did go and play baseball.
I didn't actually. I did like a baseball camp once. Yeah, no, I played hockey in high school. That's about it. Yeah, I don't know. Basketball never interests me. And the times I did watch, I'm like, there's a fucking foul every 2 seconds. This sucks. And maybe I was always catching it in like the end stages of a game or like stage of I don't know, but I just felt like here's a guy driving the lane. Oh, they called a foul. And I didn't remember that as much, like because most of the bull stuff I watched was in the playoffs, where I guess in a more physical era too. So you put the whistle away at a lot of points, and I don't know. I just feel like basketball is just weird, and maybe I'd like it more now with there's more perimeter game and a lot more spacing and different things like that. I don't know. Yeah. I haven't really gotten into it.
The final 2 minutes of a
light the beam.
The final 2 minutes of a basketball game, aka the final 45 minutes of a basketball game. With that, everybody, we're going to look to wind things down here for this week. We will be back next week to talk more about the hockey side of things and, well, whatever other random stuff comes to mind here, because that's just what the hell this podcast is, let's be honest. With that, Mr. For the Win, what do you have going on?
Not much, man.
I'm getting my
place, still doing the franchise mode, getting my place ready for my girlfriend to come visit from Finland, and that's mostly what I'm doing. Nothing really to promote.
Fair enough. I am still all over the place on the Twitch side of things. It's Madden season. It's NBA season. We started the streamer versus Twitch chat round 2 through the eras of the NBA, which is still unbelievable that even exists in a freaking console-based sports game. Gonna get my revenge on chat this year, but yeah, and of course all that
beat you last time. I think the last time I watched a full one of that was when you had the fuck
Herb.
Was his name?
Herb.
He was a G. That was.
I
don't
don't remember his
series.
last name. I just remember his fucking name was Herb. It was a 7'2" center who basically turned into Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. It was amazing.
Herb Green something. I cannot remember, but yeah, that was classic.
Someone will remember, and I thank that person in advance. For now, we will bid you adieu. Thank you very much for watching, listening to the podcast. Shout out to Manscaped, as always, for sticking with us, and we will see you next week.